Hello and welcome to another episode of The Hub on Vital MX, your one-stop shop for motocross news from around the world. It's a truly worldwide edition again this week, with updates from each continent, but we'll start right here in the United States with updates that pertain to Round 8 of Pro Motocross at Washougal. Aaron Plessinger is out because of those pesky health issues that plagued him at both Redbud and Millville. Now, at this point, it's quite clear that this is more than just a common cold or a flu. This is something maybe similar to Epstein-Barr or a chronic fatigue syndrome. So, although it's unknown what his status will be after the break when we hit Ironman, Unadilla and Budds Creek, he is definitely out for Washougal and undergoing tests to have a better understanding of what exactly is going wrong inside that body of his. A crushing blow. Of course, AP was having a brilliant season and performed exceptionally well early in Moto 1 at Millville. It's also quite a tricky time because the AMA will be selecting Team USA in the next 2 weeks or so. So with him sidelined, it's difficult to put your confidence in a man who's battling undetermined issues and his status isn't really known for the near future. In more KTM news, Tom Viau is also out because that hard hit in the second moto at Millville has left him with some soreness in his knee and shoulder. So he will miss Washougal, but is expected to return for Ironman, Unadilla and Budds Creek, the final stretch. So nothing too much to worry about there, but with Julian Beaumer out as well, Chase Sexton will be the only KTM rider at Washougal. How about that? That's a bit of a surprise. But in more Tom Viau news, he has been announced as a participant at the Paris Supercross alongside Cooper Webb, Hunter Lawrence, Jet Lawrence and, in fact, Aaron Plessinger. Particularly interesting because if the rumours are to be believed, this could potentially be his debut aboard a Honda, and in Supercross no less. Even more intriguing is the fact that he's been announced as a wildcard for WSX's Australian Grand Prix in late November. Another eyebrow-raising commitment, let's say. If he is on a Honda 450, it would be an opportunity to prove his worth in the category. But if he's on a Honda 450, his priority would of course be MXGP. So curious how that's going to shake out, or maybe he'll be on a KTM and all of this is a moot point. Ian Harrison told us at Millville that Tom has a 1-year offer from the manufacturer. It's on his table and there's no pressure to sign. So if we're taking Ian at his word, Tom hasn't made a decision yet, although rumours elsewhere hint that he has. In more Pro Motocross news, Freddie Noren split from the ISRT Kawasaki team last week pre-Millville. It's all been covered in a mysterious cloak of invisibility almost. There hasn't been much coverage of the split. It's not known what Noren will do moving forward, and it's not known why they split. But the partnership went back some ways, so it was a surprise, and Noren is, of course, a capable top 10 outdoor rider when he's at his best. But one thing is clear, he has not been that this year. And in more Kawasaki news, Jason Anderson missed Millville with a health issue, and although there's no update at the time of recording for Washougal, one would think he will miss Washougal, then take advantage of the break. It would be quite a surprise to see him on track this weekend, but I'm sure we'll get an update in the coming hours, or at the very least, days. And finally, in Pro Motocross news, Jalek Swoll revealed that he's been dealing with a torn UCL in his thumb since his return, which makes his rides even more remarkable. Of course, he's been very impressive since his return for Pro Motocross and has already appeared on the podium, so he deserves a lot of credit. He mentioned in his social media post that it's been tough practicing in the week. Moving internationally now, Liam Everts had a horrific crash in the qualifying race in Finland, that being round 13 of MXGP, and was left with a sacral fracture. Now, from what I've learned from talking to people, I think he will be back by the end of the season, but he's going to have to rest up for maybe 6 weeks or so. It seems like it's a fairly loose recovery process. There's not an exact timeline on when he'll be better, but one thing is for sure, he should miss Lockett and Lommel unless something quite drastic changes. And in more Nissan Husqvarna factory racing news, Kyder Wolff has been announced as a wildcard at this weekend's British Championship round at Preston Docks. I presume that's round 4 off the top of my head. I believe we've run 3 rounds so far. De Wolf is clearly filling the spot of Jeffrey Hurlings. Hurlings was previously announced as a wild card. He's injured, so not hard to make the assumption that DeWolf has taken that spot and that start money. I mentioned WSX's Australian GP earlier in relation to Vial, but it's also been announced that Cooper Webb, Ken Roxon, and Eli Tomac will be at that event. In a similar vein to Vial, could that be Eli Tomac's KTM debut? It certainly seems that way. WSX is going to a slightly different format model this year. It seems like riders like Ken Roxon and Eli Tomac will compete at wildcards at select events rather than in the full series. Now, I'm not sure how that will shake out as far as final championship standings go. Will those almost become insignificant because we're all focused on these shiny wildcards that we get each week? I don't know. It could take some shine off of the eventual champion, because when we have a lineup like we will have in Australia, the eventual champion will be a 5, 6, 7 place rider. So a weird dynamic, but a new model from WSX. So let's see how it goes. And speaking of Australia, crushing news this week as Jed Beaton broke his femur and will therefore relinquish the red plate in Australia's Pro MX series. He had a 29-point lead, so truth be told, all he had to do was finish and keep the bike on 2 wheels, and he would have been the MX1 champion. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. And this, of course, puts Australia in a very tight box for the Motocross of Nations, because they were choosing between Beaton and Webster for the MX2 spot, but that will now certainly be Webster. Webster will also almost certainly be your MX1 champion down under as well. To add to the heartbreak of this situation, it sounded like Beaton was going to race the last 3 Pro Motocross rounds as well. So heartbreaking all round. A tough loss for Jed Beaton and the CDR Yamaha team, and we of course wish him well in his recovery. Well, that's been another episode of The Hub. I've been your host, Lewis Phillips, and I will see you next week for much more news from the world of motocross.